Nikole Hannah-Jones, welcome back to The Daily Show.
Thank you so much for having me back.
A lot has happened in your life since the last time we spoke. You've won a Pulitzer Prize, and you have also gone on to become one of, I would say, the most polarizing lightning rods in the country because of this work. The 1619 Project, which has become, for many conservatives, the tool that they use to scare people into voting for them or changing how the things are taught in school. And for many liberals, has become the tool that people say needs to be used to talk about what's happening in society today. How do you feel about how people have received the project?
I think how the project has been received has exceeded everything I could have imagined in ways good and bad. I certainly wouldn't have expected 2 years later that so many Americans would be using 1619 as part of the national lexicon, that it would be embraced really by everyone, across the spectrum of race and class, region. But I also wouldn't have expected that the teaching of the project would be banned in Georgia and Florida and Texas and a growing number of states, or that it would become part of kind of a political wedge issue for
Right.
Republicans. So it's all been unpredictable, I think.
Do you think in the writing of this, because I know that this is essentially an updated version of the project. A new origin story, the 1619 Project, has a few essays in it that have been updated, or rather have been included now. One that's definitely gonna stir emotions up again is going to be the conversation in and around reparations that you argue for. When you think of reparations, two parts maybe. Why do you think reparations is important? And secondly, what do you think reparations should be?
Yeah, so I think that reparations is important because if we understand the system of slavery and the system of what you would call in South Africa racial apartheid, what we call here very benignly Jim Crow, fundamentally, these were systems of economic exploitation. We like to, in America, think of them as racist systems, but the racism is what justified the exploitation and the extraction of wealth from Black Americans. So here we are, 60 years out of the civil rights movement, and the wealth gap between Black and white Americans has remained unchanged. So the material disadvantage that slavery and Jim Crow was created to produce amongst Black Americans still exists. And that's why I think reparations is necessary, not just for atonement, but to actually alleviate the primary suffering of Black Americans, which is lack of wealth, which is a direct lineage and a direct link to the systems of slavery and then the 100 years of apartheid that followed. And I think, how it would work, it has to be cash payments. I think we have to really look at the system of slavery was holistic. The system of anti-Blackness was holistic. It affected us through policy. It affected us through income, through wealth, through education, through housing. So the fixes have to be holistic as well. But something that we could do immediately that doesn't take, tens of years, 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years to fix is a wealth transfer. That you can fix overnight.
A lot of Americans hear that and then they go, oh, so I have to pay for slavery that I didn't do and I wasn't physically a part of. So when you say wealth transfer, where is that actual wealth coming from?
Yes, one, it's coming from the federal government. So we all pay tax dollars to pay for a whole bunch of things that I don't agree with. I could list many things that my taxes go to that I didn't personally cause. I haven't caused a single war in this country, and yet I've had to pay taxes to pay for those wars. So I think we as Americans have to understand reparations is not being paid by white people. It's being paid by the federal government, whom we all pay into. It's a collective debt that we collectively pay. And, when I hear that argument, we're not even talking about reparations for slavery. We're talking about reparations for that 100 years where Black people out of slavery were also denied through federal policy, housing policy, education policy, the ability to gain wealth. That's my father's generation. We have living Americans right now who were kept from going to the schools they wanted to, from being able to go to college, from being able to move into neighborhoods, from being able to have federally insured loans, from being able to use the GI Bill. You can make a case of reparations without even having to go to slavery.
Let's talk a little bit about the schools. Critical race theory has now been this catch-all term that is used all over America to argue for or against certain ideas. One of the strangest things I've noticed is that half of the people arguing against critical race theory have no clue what critical race theory is for, and then some of the people arguing for it also don't have an idea what it's for. What do you think is the biggest part of the 1619 Project that is misunderstood? And so if a parent is somewhere in the country saying, I've heard about this project, you want to teach white people that they're bad. That's what the 1619 Project, it's saying that America is just bad. How would you respond to somebody who is willing, let's say, willing to actually hear your argument? What would you say to them that they misunderstand?
So one, I just think we should acknowledge that the whole critical race theory controversy is a propaganda campaign, and it's been extremely effective because a year ago, hardly anyone was talking about critical race theory, and certainly most parents had never heard of the term. The 1619 Project is not critical race theory, though certainly it's been influenced by critical race theory, which simply is saying 60 years after the civil rights movement, when we've ended legal discrimination, why are Black Americans still at disadvantage in every aspect of American life?
Mhm.
And it's actually antithetical to the belief that individual white people are responsible. It's actually saying it doesn't matter if individual white people are racist or not. The system was constructed on anti-Blackness, and so it functions on its own. I don't actually think that's controversial. So what I would say to the person who is open-minded, if you want to know what's in the 1619 Project, try reading it. Let's start with that. Everyone has formed these opinions about a project, and it becomes very clear early in the conversation that they actually haven't read it.
Right.
My main thing is I just ask people to read it and judge for themselves.
Nikole, I love that your idea is the one thing that is antithetical to everything that's in society now. Please inform your opinion before you have it, is essentially what you... People don't do that
Exactly.
anymore. You realize that, right? So yeah, good luck to you with having people have opinions on a book that they've actually read. And if the people do actually
Yes.
read it, I think they will have some really interesting opinions either way.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much for
Thank
joining me
you.
on the show. The 1619 Project, a new origin story, is available wherever books are sold.